we are ready to tape it. There are two main different styles to tape your trim. So you have trim that is caulked directly to the wall and trim that is not caulked directly to the wall. There are two big differences in the way we tape them. First, I'm going to start out with taping trim that is not caulked to the wall. Here, it's stained. Some trim is painted and also is not caulked to the wall. You're going to tape them in the same way. We will get into all the how to tape corners and around windows and up door jambs and that kind of stuff. But to start, we need to get our fundamentals right. I'm going to take my FrogTape and my painter's knife. Those are the two tools that I'm going to need here. I'm going to start by pulling out a section of tape, maybe a foot long. There are two areas on this trim that I'm going to tape slightly differently. You can see right here, the trim is away from the wall and there's a gap. My knife can slide behind there very easily. Sometimes the gap is very large. This one, it's not too bad. In other areas, the trim butts up directly against the wall. You can see my knife can't get behind there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape where there's a gap, and the rule of thumb I like to follow is I will butt my tape all the way up against the wall. Okay? I'm not running up the wall. I'm just barely touching it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that line. Now, as I'm taping, I don't want to pull a big section of my FrogTape out. I'm just going to take, you can see I'm stuck here, so I'm going to put my fingers, pinch it underneath, and I'm going to do about 6 inches at a time. So I'm going to touch here with my finger, and it's real cool. You can just manipulate farther away from the wall, closer to the wall, farther and closer. And so I'm going to bring it in all the way and just barely touch the wall, and I'm going to touch it so it's pressed down, and I'm going to gently press the rest of the section that I just laid down to the top of the trim. Now, remember, I'm just focusing on trying to tape to this top lip. I'm not worried about wrapping it down the edge. I'm going to continue down my baseboard just like this. Really, I'm just butting up directly to the wall. So what happens now, after I get this section of tape down, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to lay not the sharp edge, but the flat edge to the top, just to make sure everything's pressed down firmly. Now I'm going to do it a second time, and what I'm going to do, instead of laying my knife flat, I'm going to turn it up at a little bit of an angle. I'm not trying to cut my tape. All I'm going to do is I'm going to run it down the edge in the sections where the trim is touching the wall. It's not going to slip behind there, but it's just going to make sure it's pressed down well. When I come to the areas where there's a gap, right, my knife can slip behind there, I want to roll the edge of that tape around the backside. So I am going to run my knife just like this, and I can see that gap again. So my tape has wrapped its edge around the back side of the trim, so when I go and paint my walls, I don't have the paint coming up underneath my tape and bleeding onto the top edge of my trim because it's wrapped behind there. I'm just going to continue on. I just want to butt up against the wall, right up next to it, and so if it doesn't need to be tucked, well, it's at the perfect distance. If it does need to be tucked, then that means there's a little bit of overhang that I can tuck behind the trim that's going to keep my paint from bleeding around the tape.